Hello, friends. Welcome back. We are here today. We're a little late. We're Saturday. Saturday Cinephile is a Sunday Cinephile this week, but it's okay. We're going to be discussing "Let the Right One In" from 2008, the not the English remake, but the original. So, I guess we'll be spoiling both. I think they're pretty similar. So, just a heads up. But Jose, will you start us off with an introduction, please?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Hi, I'm Jose. I run the Jose's Amazing Worlds channel in YouTube, and I talk about anything and everything I may be reading at that time, plus movies when the situation calls for it, graphic novels, whatever.
And Layla.
Yes, I'm Layla Goshi, editor of Ballady Magazine and writer, member of Page Chewing. Yeah. Lots of stuff.
Yeah. Lots of stuff, yeah. So this one, I kept hearing that Let the Right One In is one of the best vampire movies ever made. I'm not sure about that, even though I enjoyed it. What are your thoughts on how this fits into, or where does this rank near the top for both of you on vampire movies?
Layla, you take that one first.
I would say it's not the top, but really I can't say that, and now my mind is blanking on the last vampire movie. Not Interview with the Vampire, what am I trying to say? Anyway,
there's a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I did think it was charming. It was a charming vampire movie. It had horror, but it was not overdone. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there were things about it, that that I thought were just right. Yeah.
So would you say top 10 in your all-time list? Would it have made the top 10?
Yeah, it would have. Yeah.
Nice.
I think that's a completely different conversation now. Like, what are our top 10 vampire movies ever, But it'll be somewhere there purely on, I think, originality grounds. Because it's a vampire movie in the way I like my vampires. They are threatening, they are scary, they are evil. But they've made a teenage girl or pre-teenage girl. I mean, the age is a bit uncertain. But, your main vampire is this sweet-looking 12, 13-year-old girl. But she's still bloodthirsty. She still has to kill. She still can rip people's heads and arms off when needs be. So it's certainly, for me, way better than Twilight or any of that sort of sexy vampire crap that I can't stand.
That was it.
But I think one of the merits of the movie is that seemingly it was done on a very low budget. The original Swedish movie, I mean, I haven't got the figures here. I'm sure we could check it on Wikipedia what the budget was. But I think in juxtaposition to what's going on in Hollywood these days, you can still make a good, effective movie on a low budget. You don't need to spend hundreds of millions. And I think the movie succeeds very well with the means that it got made with.
Yeah, Twilight was what I was thinking of, which there's no comparison.
No.
I love this film much more than Twilight. And
Yeah, and I think, sometimes I think Hollywood now has gone down so far down the blockbuster route that they're not willing to take risks and give a creative director, and also they'll be taking less risks because these big budget movies, when they flop, well, it's not even that they flop, but they need to make so much money in order to be profitable that they probably would be better off making 10, 20 million budget movies than making one 200 million budget movie.
Yeah.
but I'm not a Hollywood executive, thank God, so
That
I
was
don't have to
something
make that decision.
yeah, something I actually really appreciated about this film and enjoyed is the scenes, the shots of you know, each scene, and there was lack of movement, but I'm not saying that in a negative way. Like, I liked how it focused on the glittering trees, or you'd have this shot of the interior of their room or their home, and maybe that was due to budget, but it also helped. It just helps the story move in a certain way, and it gives it a certain feel and perspective. And I like that. I like when films do that. I don't know if it's done because it's low budget, but I tend to prefer that, actually. So
It kind of the setting and the environment kind of reminded me of 30 Days of Night, because you do have that same. It seems very cold. It's like if you stay outside too long, you'll die from the cold, or and a lot of the
yeah,
shots outside were wide shots, and you could see like the emptiness. It was just snow, and
yeah,
it seemed like there wasn't a world around them. Like they were like isolated, so it gave it that kind of like looming feeling of there's no escape, like there's nowhere else to go, and the environment outside is as dangerous as the vampire next door in a way,
yeah.
because it's not like you could just run somewhere, and it's far very isolated, and everyone's kind of packed in.
Yeah. You know, I love too, there are so many little details. You know, Oscar's nose was running like at least a third of the way through the film, if not more. I don't know if anyone noticed that. It's like, somebody get this guy a tissue. But it really portrayed sort of how he's between being a child, right on the cusp of, adolescence, and also just sort of contributed to his, I guess, nerdiness in a way. But again, that's the camera just focusing on him and letting you, take in those details. And the same with Ellie and really, everyone. But I did enjoy paying attention to those details. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing that sort of got to me a little bit is like all the adults seem, I don't know, just seem like a sort of like Steve mentioned already, like a fairly gloomy town where there's not much happening for anyone. Like all the adults do is sit down and drink beer and smoke, and don't seem to have generally very exciting lives, or that they got very little comforts, and it all boils down to, alcohol and stuff like that. This seemed like a very cheerful place.
Yeah.
And obviously not very nice. Oscar's being very heavily bullied at school, so it's like a fairly depressing setting. So yeah, I mean, all those things I have forgotten from the first time I watched it. And you've got that sort of comeuppance to, those bullies get more than what they deserve, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, because I think, we've all been to school. I am a teacher, so you see sort of not necessarily very nice interactions between kids, but that level of violence and aggression that is portrayed in the movie seems like something from the 60s or the 70s, not something that would necessarily happen these days.
Yeah, speaking of the time period, I wonder when this movie is supposed to be taking place, because the clothing and we don't get a whole lot of, it's limited what we see, but I wondered during the film if this was based on like the 70s or 80s, based on their clothes and but maybe it's just the what they wear. I don't know if it was supposed to be like in the past.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to be as old as all of that. I think But you're right, some sort of indeterminate time. It could be somewhere in the late 70s, early 90s, maybe somewhere there. I don't know. I mean, there's certainly that lack of technology, isn't it?
That's a great point. There was a poster in Ellie's house or her room. Did anyone notice it? It was a young woman, and I think a guy was on the poster too, but it looked like they were dancing, and she did have kind of a 60s, 70s look. But perhaps that person is someone well known in Sweden, though. You know, it could be more of a local popular character, and I meant to look that up actually. I don't know if that detail's out there. Yeah, but they don't have, it doesn't look like they have the technology. So.
Yeah. Was anyone bothered by the lack of explanation as to why there is a vampire? Like, she just is. And she's been looked after by this old gentleman who they just move into town next door to Oscar, but there's no background whatsoever. Did that bother anyone?
Yeah. Well, in a way, I think in one sense, I think it gives her some mystery, and it sometimes what we think of is worse or more interesting than what they would tell us about it. So sometimes too much, sometimes less is more. But in this sense, I would like to have known at least like how she became a vampire or how old she was. A little bit more on who was this man taking care of her, because by the end of the film I wondered, was this another boy that she befriended and just took care of her his whole life, and then is this like a cycle that she does and she just replaces them with a young boy to take care of her? Because I wondered, like, why didn't she turn Oscar? But I guess it limits what she's able to do if she can't go out at night, and she needs someone during the day to do things for her.
Yeah, I love that idea of it possibly being a cycle. How she easily let the older man go and helped him go, but she seemed to be willing to leave Oscar and was intending to leave Oscar, from what I gather, until she sensed he would threaten, and she came back and saved him. So it's kind of like nebulous what role Oscar's going to play after this. It's kind of like a love story, but she is always going to have the upper hand, I think, in terms of, violence. But then again, he has shown hints that he would not mind being more violent himself. The knife and thinking about revenge. There's also hope in that regard that he will join her in some way.
But I think that raises an interesting point, in that, because she's not exactly, I mean, if she's not a likable character, she certainly isn't an unlikable character. But from what you've just expressed there, is she like just selfish and self-serving, and the reason she saves Oscar and the reason she befriends Oscar and the reason, is it ultimately a selfish act, like she needs a new carer, and therefore is she more evil than at first sight it may appear in the movie?
Yeah. I can't hear you.
Your mic's off, Steve.
I was getting a drink of coffee and I forgot to turn it back on. No, I wonder that too. Is she supposed to be a sympathetic character? Are we supposed to be rooting for her? Because she seems more like a predator. Because I wonder with the bullying, did she choose Oscar because of his tendencies, because he was prone to violence and she felt like she could isolate him and take advantage of him, or did she really care for him? Because I wondered with the bullies, if she waited until the right moment to where that came to a peak where she could step in. She waited for that to develop and keep getting worse and worse and worse until she's the only thing that can save him, or at least he thought the only thing that could save him was her, and he would be, I don't want to say in debt to her, but he would be, she would be his hero or whatever, and she would be able to kind of, like he would be her next carrier.
Yeah, because the actor played it well, I think. I mean, he really, even after the bullies were killed, to me, he still kind of had just a vacant look on his face. He was happy about it, but he still kind of an immature way of looking at her, floating in the pool, just kind of smiling, laughing, and I don't know. So I don't see him as like a proactive person. But I do see that he did have some, I guess, assertiveness when he realized she was a vampire. It seemed like he, was accusing her of, like she wouldn't let him out, and he's like, "Are you going to let me out?" Or and so he seemed to be separating himself from her there, which I think took some gumption. But then I think he truly cares for her, and as for her, I really think she's too jaded to be innocently in love, so I do think there's a motive behind it as well.
Yeah, I think I just got like so many things going through my head as you guys are talking. So point number one, I do not necessarily agree that Oscar has got violent tendencies. I think he's a boy that has been pushed to the limit. Mm-hmm. And if he's violent, it's because of everything that has been happening to him, that has been building up. Mm-hmm. So probably, like by nature, he seems to be like a fairly sort of calm, quirky boy. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he is willing to, he takes the knife and engage in that sort of retribution is a product of what's happened to him, not his nature. Then Layla just said, I don't think she's got like deep feelings for him, because she mentioned that she's really old, so she'd be quite jaded, isn't it? Yeah. Who knows how many carers she's had. So I think the more we talk about it, the more it reinforces my opinion that she is very selfish and self-motivated. But it's that moment in the movie when she walks into his apartment without being invited, where he's still not sure whether she's a vampire or not, and she puts herself at risk because he hasn't invited, and then she starts sort of bleeding or whatever it is that's going to happen to her. But is that calculated risk, or really is the movie sort of, is that her real, like, is she being honest there, and are we overthinking it too much, and actually there's a bit of a connection and some affection between them? Or is that calculated risk she took to really hook him in and, make herself vulnerable so that he would fall for her all the way?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. So about the carer, the first carer, it seemed that he was also killing people to get blood for her. And I couldn't think of how that morally was, or if we're supposed to think that was morally better than her just going out and killing somebody on her own. So I just wondered what that was about, if you all took a different interpretation of what he was doing. At first I wondered if he was also a vampire, but that was just kind of more his thing. So
is that a plot hole though? Because she's clearly capable of killing someone by herself and feeding herself. So yes, she might need a carer for sort of day-to-day things, because effectively she's only a girl. So to get money, somewhere to live, all that kind of stuff. But she didn't need him to go and kill people and collect the blood for her. So maybe there's a bit of a plot hole there on the script.
The way that I kind of interpreted that is that he served her knowing that his time was limited, like he was expended, like he was disposable, and he was protecting her from someone seeing or from someone remembering what she looked like. So the way I took it was that he was doing these things to keep her safe and to keep her out of sight, like to not let anyone see her or suspect her or run her out of town if they find out. Like he did, he burned his face to prevent them from getting back to her. Wasn't because he has nothing to. I mean, he knew that what was going to happen. He didn't expect to survive, so he maimed himself to protect her. Like it wasn't self-preservation; it was to protect her. So that's kind of the way I took it. I guess it seemed like he kind of accepted that role, and I wonder if Oscar will be that for her next.
Yeah, I think there's high potential there.
Oscar doesn't seem to have the strongest character. That's it. So he's not gonna. It doesn't look like he's gonna grow up to be someone that can stand against her. Although it's a very uncertain future. Like, what are they gonna do together? Just two kids on the run. What's gonna happen?
Yeah.
It's a long-term plan.
After he had left her apartment, after he had discovered she was a vampire, he's going back to his apartment, and his mother is yelling at him for some reason. I didn't quite get. Oh, I think it was after the guy died in when Ellie killed the guy in her apartment. And then he left. And speaking of plot holes, I really felt like, first, I didn't know how the guy knew to get to that apartment, how he knew that she was the girl. And then after Oscar leaves and goes back to his apartment, his mother meets him in the hallway and starts yelling at him. And I wasn't quite sure, did she hear the murder happening? What's going on here? So that was another section. It definitely, it helped characterize Oscar as just being sort of a passive observer of all of this, just at the mercy, actually, of, I guess, the women in his life, and so I'm just wondering if you all caught either of that and wondered the same.
What do you think, Jose? Do you have any thoughts on those?
No, not really. I thought, because I can't quite remember, but weren't the guys friends? And didn't they live next door to each other or something like that? Or at the beginning when they move in, they are seen moving in?
Yeah, I think when he helps them with their bags at the very beginning, and he's outside relieving himself, and he looks up and I forget his name, he's putting a cover on the window, and then he sees him later in the diner, and he invites him over, and I'm busy, I have to go. So he was avoiding everyone, and then he disappears because he's dead, but no one knows that it was him who was going to kill the kid and who maimed himself and ended up dying in the hospital, or falling. So I kind of thought that this character was becoming obsessed with finding who killed his friend, and he was starting to look for clues and suspected, like, where did this person go? Maybe there's something to this. That's kind of the way I took it.
And I suppose that if we're talking about that the action is taking place in a small town where everyone knows everyone, and then all of a sudden there's a death and a disappearance, that coincides with someone totally new moving in.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think that's a sort of relatively plausible logic step to take.
Yeah.
And I was confused too when he came home and his mom was yelling at him, because I thought that's a strange, because I thought at first that she knew that he knew about the person being killed, but I think it's because he was out that night, because he snuck into her house or her apartment, and I don't think he was home that night. I think he didn't read, he like snuck out, and then he didn't come back home until later. So I think he was missing for a few hours, and I think that's why she was mad, because I was confused at first, but I think that's why she was upset, because if he was involved in a murder, I think she'd have a different reaction to that, but I wasn't sure why at first either, but I think it's because he was missing.
Okay. That makes sense.
So, is the movie not so much a sweet love story between kids, but a cautionary tale?
I think it's a little of both. I would say more of a cautionary tale, just because this was an isolated child who was being bullied. I mean, I do read it from that perspective a little more. I think Oscar thinks he's in a love story, and that's what makes it so interesting, I think. Because you can kind of see it from both ways, but I do think, first Oscar was isolated and then this happened. But he does have, overall, Oscar does have his father is nice to him, The mom says something about, do I need to tell the school you don't have a father or something? But, he does have a father that's nice to him and takes him out and does things, so... but overall, I think he was vulnerable.
Yeah, it's just like, it just reminded me, because I think this morning my wife and I were talking about the things that you do or say when you're young in that sort of first or second love sort of situation, and how I said to her that, God forbid, if I found myself like having to date someone again or whatever, like I just don't have the energy or the interest anymore, because the things you say when you are dating someone for the first time or the first few weeks, and it's so dangerous, because then, sorry to say, Layla, but women have got that tape recorder memory, and then 3 years later, but you said that you would this and they would bring back stuff that you said with the full conviction of what you felt at the time. And obviously times change, and then later on you're held accountable for it. But it is that sort of, first love sort of thing that... Yeah.
Where there's no, everything looks like utopia in that first, love kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like, you've seen her kill people, you've seen her bleed spontaneously, you've seen her chop people's limbs off. It's a bit of a red herring, right? If you were dating someone, like maybe you would, but no, he's committed, because it's the first time that a girl has shown any interest in him, Whereas any 25-year-old or plus, they would just run 3 miles the other direction. So
that's so funny. Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah.
It is, and I think it also, not only a girl paying attention to him, but also someone who's saving him from him or helping him with his bullying issue. They do some really terrible things to him.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, that scene where sorry, Layla, where they're trying to drown him, it doesn't look like they are trying to just scare him, isn't it? It looks like they're purposely trying to kill him there, or maybe you get the sense that this is just gonna go too far, that this is it's gonna tip over from bullying to an accident that no one wanted to happen. Because some of the kids that bully him, it does get too much for some of them, isn't it? I think there's a scene where they're hitting him when they go on a trip with the force, where they hit him with once they draw blood, like some of the bullies go like, oh, we've gone too far, this is not fun anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas the other kid and his older brother, they're like, no, we can carry on here.
I thought that part was really well done and believable, that a lot of times bullies in a mob are just as weak as the person they're bullying. They're just joining the side where they're protected, and so I thought that was reasonably realistic. I did like that Oscar got at least one good whack in on his main bully, so so Oscar's got some spunk, but and that's why too, besides the knife, I felt like, well, maybe there's room for him to join her, but really overall he's still more of a follower.
Because would she have been able to, I don't know if a snare is the right word, but to have that kind of relationship with a less socially awkward kid? Or was she predatorial in that way?
I kind of see her as a predator. As I don't think she necessarily cares about Oscar. I think she does. I mean, a little bit of. I think when you get to who knows how old she is, I think reality changes for you, and you see things. You don't really see people as people because they're going to come and go, and you're still going to be around. So I don't see her as someone who necessarily cares about Oscar. I think she cares about what he can do for her. Because I think if she really wanted a companion, she would turn him and try to find someone else. So, but I don't think she will, because she needs that. She needs to be appealing in that way to bring someone in a sense. And I guess the younger she finds them, the better, because then they'll serve her for longer. That's kind of the way I don't know. I mean, I don't see her as she's kind of the antagonist in a way, I think.
I see her that way. There are a couple of things that make me wonder. One, it did seem that she was trying to distance herself from Oscar. Like first he cut his hand to do like a blood pact with her, and she chased him out. And then she was going to leave town, but then came back to save him. But then even that, like I've said before, she has the upper hand, I think. So, because he's not able to save himself yet. So he can't save himself from her.
But I think it goes back to the earlier question, and I think it is open to both interpretations. Is it a sweet love story, or do you take the more stiff, grim, dark, cynical view, and it's all calculated and manipulation from her side? No, I'm going to be honest here. I'm leaning more towards she is a predator and she has played this really well. But I suspect that some people, a lot of people, however, whatever percentage of people can walk away with the love story interpretation and be fine with it. I think it's sort of relatively open to both sides.
I think that's what makes it more interesting too.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It makes you kind of reflect on, different human behaviors. But I wanted to mention 2 or 3 of my favorite moments. One was the cat attack.
Yeah.
Which I loved. And the other was when they sawed the guy out of the ice. I'm sorry, but where his hands and legs are sticking out. I'm like, what is this? So I'm not sure if that was, either one was intentionally humorous, but that was just wonderful. I just loved them both. And the third one was when she climbed the exterior of the hospital. And that was just enough weirdness that, there's kind of a little thrill there. It showed her supernatural side.
Yeah, and I thought that was, it is obviously special effects, but I think they're fairly well done.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, it looks kind of weird and supernatural, in the same way when she attacks the man under the bridge.
Yeah.
And it's obviously done in the dark so that you save on special effects and all that stuff. But I think it's effective. And I just got on the Wikipedia. The movie was made for $4.5 million, which is nothing, isn't it? It's the least you could possibly ever pay for a movie. And it made $11.2 million, which is almost 3 times its budget with probably zero promotion and zero publicity. So,
and now
like I was saying before, I think studios should take more chances like this.
Oh, I definitely think so. And that's why I was saying, this whole Hollywood, boycott or whatever's going on. I'd love to see people just do more self-produced, indie type stuff, because this was a wonderful story, and it focused in on the essentials of telling the story, which made it interesting.
Yeah, I think less is more. I think a lot of the more popular movies as of late have been big budget, cities blowing up and everything. But you don't need all that to have an effective movie. Just like you said, Layla, her climbing up the wall was creepy, and it was just enough to kind of creep you out. Like, wow, that's really, and it's in the distance, and it's. So you don't need to have this over the top, special effects all the time. I think even the cat attack, I think that was probably the most they spent on special effects, is the cats. So yeah, that was really neat. And her reaction. What did both of you think about her asking to have the drapes drawn or the curtains opened and burning?
You mean the woman, the woman that was infected? Yeah, I thought that was interesting because I did not have the impression that Ellie had a problem with the sunlight. I mean, she was seen at night more, but that really wasn't played up until, but with the woman who's infected, yes. And I did enjoy that. I guess that's another great scene where she just bursts into flames. And the doctor is just standing there horrified. But it fits within, the genre of it. It made perfect sense. It just made me go back and think now, were we really shown that with Ellie? But then it makes sense that she was mostly active at night. So.
Yeah, the only thing it will make me think about that is like, did this lady know that she was becoming a vampire? Like, is that how do you know that that's what's going to happen to you and that the light will kill you? Like, I don't know. That left me a little bit. How do they know what's going on?
Yeah, and it also led me to wonder, would Ellie burst into flames? But I might need to watch it again. Maybe there were things I didn't pick up on the first time. But, it did make sense to me with the infected lady that she would think it came as a result of the bite and that something was happening. I interpreted her eyes being sensitive to sunlight at first until she just first immolated, so.
Yeah, I think the light hit her finger one time and she kind of pulled it away, but I know she said she didn't want to live anymore, but, and I wondered, did Ellie know that she didn't finish the job, or did she not realize that the woman is going to turn, or did she care?
There's a lot of unanswered. Well, in the same way that we have an unanswered ending and we have an unexplained beginning, we have a lot of unanswered, well, not a lot, but some unanswered questions along the way, isn't it?
Yeah, it's, coming back to Malazan, it's kind of like Malazan in that sense that they're waiting for this answer, but the story still holds together, I think. But it does leave us with so many unanswered questions. And I do kind of see that as more, that to me is more realistic. I mean, if something like this happened in our towns, there would still always be questions. Why did this happen this way? Who is this? Who is that? Who did this? Who did that? So I can live with it in this story. There are sometimes, there are other stories where if the ending doesn't make sense at all, you'll go back and blame the plot holes. But this is one where I think it still works.
But does it open the possibility for an expanded universe, like a sequel movie 20 years later, or a prequel movie, or some kind of, was that intentional, or was it just a one-off? And I mean, because I think now talking about it, the potential is there for a sequel and a prequel and maybe novels around it. I don't know. It seems like the world could be expanded upon.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would watch a continued story just of Ellie, or both of them together, but definitely I think she's a compelling character.
Yeah, a prequel would be great. Even just when she met the first man who was taking care of her, or when she was turned, or just her life. I'd be interested in that.
Well, actually, sorry to interrupt you there. The original book, which is from 2004, which is what the movie was based on, the author wrote a short story exploring what happened to Oscar and Ellie after they got off on the train.
Oh, really?
It's called Let the Old Dreams Die. All this information is on the Wikipedia, so yeah.
Have to check that out.
Oh, that might answer some of our questions.
Yeah.
There you go.
And it's that is part of the lyrics of the Morrissey song, because I was looking this all up, prior. I went back and listened to the Morrissey song, which apparently was an inspiration for the title, at least, if not the story. So that title you just said, Jose, what is it? Old Dreams Die. I think that's in the lyrics too.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
But it doesn't sound like a very promising end to their relationship, if the old dreams are gone. But maybe. I might want to look into it if it's just a short story.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
There was a scene. I'm sorry, Jose, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to make some, flippant comment that there's nothing you cannot find on the internet these days. But,
yeah. There was one scene that I was really confused about. I didn't know if either of you had thoughts on it. Is when he was visiting his dad and his friend comes over. It seems like he and his dad are bonding, and then the friend comes over, and it seems they pull out like the vodka or whatever they're drinking. I wasn't too sure what that scene was supposed to tell us about the dad or Oscar or their relationship. It seemed I was a little confused.
The way I interpreted it, and I obviously could be wrong, because the parents were divorced or separated or whatever, and is that potentially that the dad was homosexual and that was the boyfriend? I think that was, to me, that was like instantly where my mind went to. But, again, it's not explained. It's another one of those things in the movie left open to interpretation.
That's how I interpreted too. And one reason is, Oscar's dad is not like the guys hanging around the beer hall or wherever they were. When we meet Oscar's dad, I'm like, he just seems like someone who'd be living in, I don't know, he's living on a farm, but he just presents himself as someone living in a more cosmopolitan environment than their small town, and so definitely that they have portrayed a difference, a big difference between Oscar's dad and the rest of the guys that just hang out. So, and then when the friend came over, that's how I interpreted it too, that the friend was a boyfriend. But again, I think they're leaving that open, like everything else, they're leaving that open to interpretation.
What do you make of that, Steve?
That's kind of where I went to with it. I thought because, okay, so the parents are separated or divorced, and then the friend comes over, and it didn't seem like a platonic friendship to me. It seemed like there was something else there, and it kind of felt like that was one of the things that set Oscar over the edge to be open to running away with Ellie, is kind of like his dad chose, whether it was a man or a woman or whatever it was, kind of like he chose this over Oscar, or this over Oscar and his mom. So I kind of felt like he felt abandoned by his dad, and he was farther down the priority list for him, because he kind of, when his friend came over, or when his boyfriend or whatever came over, it seemed like he kind of ignored him after that. Like they were doing something and he's okay, well, we're going to go and do this now. And kind of like he forgot about him when his partner came over.
Yeah, that's a great point, because like I was saying earlier, I felt that even after that happened, I didn't feel that Oscar had a negative relationship with his dad, or negative, attitude toward his dad. But that did, I had even forgotten about that. That did make me think, well, maybe that's why, his parents aren't together, and that's just a source of instability for any child, to have sort of a broken family. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if, and I'm only asking the question, is that just an easy cliche that kids that come from a broken home are more vulnerable? Because, I mean, this day and age, particularly in the US, you guys, the rate of divorce is just, I don't know, there's more divorced people than married people now. And, if every kid that came from a broken marriage was messed up, I think we will have way more issues than we've got. I think, unfortunately, divorce and broken marriages are so common today. And, I don't necessarily see that as a teacher. I've got so many students who live with grandparents, so, 1 week with mom, 1 week with dad or whatever, and they just carry on with their lives. I don't know if it's an easy cliche to tag on to an explanation or a reason for Oscar's awkwardness.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, because my overall impression, like Oscar gets in trouble at school, he talks to his dad on the phone. I mean, there's not any sense of real negativity between him and his dad where it would make him feel like, sometimes if a parent is a bully, then you're more likely to have bullying at school, because the kid doesn't have like that home environment, So overall, I don't see the dad or the mom really as a source of all of Oscar's problems. I think part of it is his personality too, So because I don't know. I'd have to think about that a little more, but overall I have a fairly positive view of both the mom and dad.
Yeah, I kind of took it as the setup for Oscar and his background on he already felt somewhat abandoned by his dad, whether his dad abandoned him or not, and his mom seemed angry and a little bitter, maybe because of the marriage ending. And I kind of took that as a prime candidate for Ellie to isolate him and to become a place of comfort and support for him, where he didn't feel like he had it anywhere else. So he perceived, whether it was real or not, he perceived his mom and his dad as like this broken you know, he kind of something they were playing against each other, like they didn't really get along. So he felt isolated already. So along with the bullying and everything else that was happening in his life, it seemed like, again, going with the Ellie's a predator approach, he's the perfect candidate for what she needs, because he would be an easy mark for her because he is being bullied at school. He really has nowhere to turn. His mom and his dad are both kind of, there's no kind of unity together with them. They don't really seem like they work together, even separated as a unit. So it seemed like she could pull him in and he wouldn't feel as bad leaving if he had a mom or a dad, one or together or separate, that really felt like they were supporting him. Because his mom, for all the things that was happening to him, she had no idea that he comes home with this big mark on his face, and I fell at recess, and it's like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, she didn't really push him on, like, it didn't seem like she was really active in his life for whatever reason. So I kind of took that as he kind of setting up his background on, he felt like he had nowhere else to go. Like, okay, sure, like, let's get on the train and put you in a box and I'll take care of you, and we'll, you know.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's kind of the way I took it. But again, I think the case could be made for it being a legit love story. I mean, a happy love story, that they had this childhood bond, and she was the only friend he had. And so you can make the case either way. I think that she genuinely cares for him, or that she does this every 70 or 80 years or so.
Well, here's another way of looking at this, because, you know, this is great. We have our bullies who, just from my personal perspective, no evidence, generally do not have good home lives either. You know, I mean, if a kid is out there, you know, and is so maniacal that they're, you know, going to be hitting somebody with a whip and whipping their face, and I don't know, there's something, especially at that age, I don't know, there's something wrong there, somehow, where a parent isn't paying attention to that child either. So if we're going to, let's retell this story from the bully's perspective. Here they are trying to, you know, like acting out what may have happened to them at home, and then one thing leads to another, and a vampire kills them at a swimming pool. That would make a good story too. You know, so I feel like in this film, you could almost look at every character as, you know, there's no rational character. There's the guys hanging out too much at the beer hall, you know. There's the teenagers not asking why their friend has been hung upside down,
yeah,
and almost killed, you know. Then there's your bully. So I don't know. But ultimately, I guess what I'm saying is I think there's room to say every one of those kids weren't being paid attention to. You know. Yeah, Jose, what do you think?
No. It's because it's a recurring conversation with my wife, and it's always, rightly or wrongly, I always go back down to personal accountability, and that you choose to do the things that you choose to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, some kids come from a broken home and they're the nicest kids I've ever met, and some kids come from a broken home and they are a-holes to the nth degree, right?
Right.
So not everyone is affected in the same way by the same circumstances, and I appreciate that. But ultimately, at some point, you are the one that chooses to do what you're doing. No one is forcing you to be a bully. Your parents are not telling you to go out, and I understand that you take your frustrations out on other people, but you know, giving us more background on those kids would be like trying to get us to empathize with them, and that's just one step closer to justifying what they're doing. And sometimes the road to forgiveness goes through understanding, and I'm not willing to embark on that road, because I think that's, you know, some things are just not okay, and I don't care what happened to you, what led you to those circumstances. Yeah, you know, I understand desperation, I understand all those things, but there's right and wrong. And I, yeah, call, you know, my lack of empathy, accuse me of, you know, all that kind of stuff that my wife often does. But, you know, I am guilty of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that as far as the story, that's, to me, was just a thread of interest, that did they deserve to be killed in that way by a vampire, since they were kids, just doing dumb kid things, and also weren't being watched by their parents either, you know. So that's another, I think, moral question just to ask ourselves if we celebrated the bullies being killed. But you know.
Yeah, because that's not even an eye for an eye, is it?
No.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there as a question. And I do believe, though, I think personality also plays a big role in, you know, how we respond to things. And so I think you're right, Jose, that, yeah, kids from broken homes can be the nicest kids, and vice versa. Kids with very involved parents can be like bullying kids too. That's true.
I was surprised they killed all the kids at the end. I was surprised they all were killed. I thought the older brother, I was fine with him, his arm floating in the pool, because I kind of felt, I don't want to say I felt bad for the kid, the ringleader that was Oscar's age, because he's a little asshole too. But he when his older brother, it seems like he's repeating what his older brother was doing to him. So I kind of felt like the older brother, I think, you know, I was like, okay, I'm fine with that. But the other kids, I kind of like, wow, they went, like, I was surprised. They did leave, I think, one alive, the kid who was crying, and they killed the other two. So do we celebrate that? Is that something to sell? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could see, like, killing the brother and, like, you know, draining him of his blood in front of them. I think that'll set them straight. I don't know. If that won't scare you, I don't know what will.
But so again, like a million thoughts going through my head. But again, it's human nature, isn't it, that you will cheer the brutal killing of someone that, you know, like I said, it's not even eye for an eye. The punishment is 10 times worse, whatever they were doing. So I think human creatures are capable of the best and the worst. And then, totally unrelated, but how effective is that arm falling in the water, as opposed to showing you the monster ripping the arm off? Because did you guys expect to see the arm falling into the water like that when you got that camera shot and the water?
I expected a few drops of blood or something, but I loved the arm. I loved it.
When I saw the severed head,
yeah,
that was cool. When the severed head plops in the pool, I thought, okay, like, whose head is that? And then, you know, so that was neat.
I love that it was subtle, if that's the right word to use, but effective.
I think, and I think that's the nature of having a low budget. Like, you have to get really creative if you want to go for impact and effect without it looking cheap and, you know, laughable. And it just, you know, goes back to my previous point about giving creative people not hundreds of millions, but just enough to, like, make their ideas work and force them to get really creative and because I think the movie works really well, and I think if it had a much bigger budget, then they would have gone for, you know, full splatter gore or whatever, and then you go like, it's not quite the same. Whereas the image of the head and the arm is just like, wow.
Yeah.
I think. Anyway,
so do you think they avoided having Ellie look too vicious? I know she kills the two people. Well, she actually kills the one person. She tries to kill the woman. She survives. Do you think they shied away from showing what she's capable of to make her more sympathetic?
Well, I think there's two reasons there. I think you are meant to like her. I think because you know, if the movie gets you to hate a 13-year-old girl, you know, you'll probably feel quite dirty about yourself. That, you know, she's also meant to be some kind of victim, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you found yourself disliking a poor, you know, 13-year-old girl, the movie wouldn't succeed. Whereas they get you to empathize with her in a way. So I think both for budget reasons and for emotional reasons, I think quite cleverly they moved away from those scenes.
Yeah. And you know, they do say though, I mean, Ellie does say, "I'm not a girl." I mean, they give evidence that she is something more than what we see, you know. Because she tells Oscar she's not a girl. She tells him that a couple of times. We do get the sense that she's some kind of spirit, or some kind of spirit has a hold of her. I'm not sure which. But if she doesn't age, you know, there's definitely some kind of quality, magical quality there. So, but it's an undercurrent. And that's what I like. It's subtle enough where you know, like we've said, what she's capable of, but you can still like her and even feel for her. I loved how they just made her look so exhausted and pale, and the special effects of the blood around her mouth and all of that was really realistic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What did both of you think of the little egg that she has that you said if you sold this you could buy a nuclear power plant, and it looked like a little egg on a little stand, and then she touches it and it falls apart, or he touches it actually, and what that meant, what the significance of that was, because she tells him to touch it, and when he touches it, it opens and it kind of falls into pieces. I wasn't sure what that meant. Yeah.
Yeah. The contents were rings she'd stolen from people, I guess, precious stones. I did think it was bizarre that they used a nuclear power plant as a measure of expense, you know, instead of, I don't know, just anything else. You could buy the Eiffel Tower or just whatever, you know. So I just found that to be very quirky and weird, but in a good way. But yeah, the egg, I think I'll have to think on that a bit more. I'm not sure if it symbolized anything.
I don't know, maybe it's just a metaphor for the transient nature of material things.
Mm-hmm.
When you are some kind of however many centuries old creature, and some kind of meditation on the material versus the spiritual. But I think it's such a, I don't know, I remember it now that you mention it, but I don't think it's one of the bigger themes of the movie. And now that you talk about it, I'm not quite sure how it fits in the overall narrative there. Maybe in the book it's got a bigger prominence, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a really quick scene.
I think if anything, it might just be like revealing secrets. Like she asked him to touch it, I think right about the same time that he realized she was a vampire. So maybe if there was any symbolism, that might have been it.
I kind of wonder now, thinking back on it, as if him touching it and it falling apart was a sign that he was a suitable candidate for her. I don't know. I mean, not a whole lot given to us in that scene, but I think, like you said, kind of sets the stage for. She does have money. She does have. She takes rings and gets money from the people that she kills. So she's not starving. Well, I guess she doesn't need to eat, but she has means, and there's kind of gives the idea that there's more around her and the vampires in general. Maybe, like you said, Jose, maybe to expand on that later, kind of setting up for maybe possible stories later, or maybe it's in the short story.
Yeah, or maybe it's what do you call it, foreshadowing how the future may pan out, that all eventually will end up crumbling down.
Yeah,
because surely looking after a vampire, that cannot end well, can it? It's kind of be a recipe for a happy life.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to remark on the use of Morse code. I thought that was just a cool little element in the story. How they're communicating, without words. How there's like another. I mean, they're connecting on different levels, different means of communication. So nice little details. I love the poodle, the white poodle. Does anybody remember that? I was like, oh no, right in the beginning when, or close to the beginning when Ellie's carer hangs someone upside down to kill them, and somebody's walking their bright white poodle. I'm like, what is this?
I'm kind of surprised he didn't kill the dog.
Yeah, I was expecting either the dog to get killed or just have this massive blood dump on the dog because it was so white.
But there is good reason for that. Because, again, back to human nature, he kills a man, no one cares. You kill the dog, everyone gets upset.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I was more worried about that dog at that moment.
There you go.
Hanging upside down on that tree.
It's like textbook movie writing, isn't it? You want to make a character unlikable, get him to kill a puppy. That's it, Doesn't matter how much he gives to charity later or what he does later. He's the bad guy. You can kill 100 people in a movie. So long as you're petting a cat, you're all right.
Yeah. And the cat scene was heartwarming too. I mean, those cats will, take care of business. So.
Yeah, they don't play around. They were pretty vicious. That was pretty funny.
Yeah. So I think that's what made it fun for me. It's got creepiness. It's got the gore. It's got the ambiguity. It's a good story. And there were just what I thought were some hilarious moments, So it's a good film.
Yes. Yeah.
I would say it's certainly effective, and it's technically well executed for... I mean, you could clearly see that it was a low-budget movie, isn't it? It's not great. It's all very much filmed on location. All the sort of action pieces are done in really dark light or at night or whatever, but it works, and that's what it doesn't look cheap, and that's great.
Yeah.
So I think we're all I think we all enjoyed it. I think it's safe to say that we all.
Yeah, it's a thumbs up.
Yeah.
So, circling back all the way to the beginning then, Steve, and I don't know, just have a quick brainstorm. What other vampire movies would you chuck in there that are better than these, or that you would sort of recommend?
Off the top of my head, I think Interview the Vampire is underrated. I like the book, but I think the movie is really good. I like that. The other movies in that were made aren't as good, but I thought Interview the Vampire is probably if not the top of my list, like near the top. I haven't seen it in a while, but 30 Days of Night is pretty good, although I have issues with the end. What else is really good? I'm trying to think. Of course, now that you ask me, of course I forget, but that's kind of what comes to my mind off the top of my, immediately.
What about you, Layla?
Yeah, the two that came to my mind were Twilight and Interview with the Vampire. I think there are, what was the recent zombie/vampire film?
Recent.
I'll have to go back and look at that. But this definitely fit the bill for me in terms of a vampire who walks among us and is horrifying and likable at the same time. Yeah, so this is definitely up there.
Just looking over the kind of lists of the Lost Boys, I guess can be. It was okay, I guess. Only Lovers Left Alive was pretty good. It's another one that's more about companionship and less about being a vampire, I guess. There's a lot of others on these lists I haven't seen yet.
I forgot about the Lost Boys. No, but this is my expectation of a vampire movie, because I'm not, going back to Dracula, I think Dracula's old-fashioned now. I don't know if it's sacrilegious to say that, but what I do like about the Twilight trend is sort of bringing the modern take on vampires, that it's not this guy walking around in a cloak and all that stuff, but just this ordinary, even appealing person who also has like this terrible affliction.
A couple others on this list. I'm not sure if you guys have seen Daybreakers with Ethan Hawke. That was pretty good. There's another one that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. Is Stakeland from 2010. I'm not sure if either of you have seen that one. It's where vampires have taken over. A couple that stand up, but a lot of these, a lot of the ones on these lists I haven't seen yet, or 30s and 40s.
Right.
From Dusk Till Dawn, I forgot about that one too. Yeah.
Although that's certainly an interesting take on the vampire movie, isn't it?
Yeah. So. Yeah, but this is a good one.
Yeah, pretty good. Well, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, good stuff. So, anything else you guys can think of?
No,
thanks for suggesting this one. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it always amazes me how much comes out when we have these conversations.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden Steve will say something or Layla will say something, and then it's like, oh my god, yeah, and then things that I don't think about when I'm watching the movie, but when you guys mention it, it opens up the conversation, and it always amazes me that we're spending almost an hour and a quarter talking about the movie, and when we start, I'm always thinking, how are we gonna make this last? Like, but I suppose that's why you have conversations, isn't it? And that's why you talk to people, and it does expand the whole thing. So I'm really appreciative and grateful to being here.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, it's always like, how are we going to fill in even like 40 minutes, and then here we are almost an hour and a half later, like, find all these topics to talk about. But so until next time, Jose, where can people find you? Where's the best place to find your stuff?
Best place to find me, thank you, is in YouTube at Jose's Amazing Worlds, and on Instagram it's jose.amazing.worlds. That's where I am most of the time, and obviously on the page chewing.com forums.
Awesome. And Layla?
On social media and on page chewing forums.
Awesome. Well, thanks both of you for making time out of your Sunday to come in and chat. Really appreciate it. So until next time, we'll talk to everyone soon.
All right.